Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Tonight on Our News, what's behind an alarming increase in COVID cases? The Bahamas to receive more doses of the COVID-19 vaccine tomorrow, plus a teen girl among 9 people charged with possessing fake COVID tests. Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, health officials are heading to Harbor Island as the small community experiences an uptick in COVID-19 cases. The increase is being blamed on spring break activity. This as officials continue to monitor an increase in cases on New Providence and Grand Bahama.
And there is an uptick in cases, a cluster related to travel.
Tighter restrictions may be on the way for Harbor Island as health officials keep a close eye on an uptick in COVID-19 cases, according to Director of Government's Infectious Diseases Program, Dr. Nikia Forbes, who said health officials have already made recommendations to the competent authority. The past 2 weeks have been very busy for the small island community, with hotels and private residences all booked out. Marinas seeing their fair share of yachts docked as well. And the blame is being placed on spring break.
We have made recommendations to help to flatten the curve there. And that will start with a team on the grounds as we monitor the cases closely. That health officials are doing their best and will be putting efforts in place to control that.
But the concern is not just on Bryland. Health officials have been noticing an increase in cases over the past few weeks, with 42 new cases confirmed on March 27th, 22 on New Providence, 14 on Grand Bahama, and 5 on Eleuthera, mainly Harbor Island. In March 26th, there were 34 confirmed cases. Forbes said unlike the second wave where clusters were traced back to the workplace, these new cases are all over, and it's concerning.
We're observing that in Grand Bahama, Abaco, and New Providence. And that is extra concerning because when there is a sustained increase in the number of cases, this could be an indication that we're on the cusp of a third wave.
As the country is still in the beginning phase of its 2-dose vaccine rollout and now on the cusp of a third wave, as Forbes calls it, there's only so much the vaccine can do right now.
Prevention is the public health instructions. Vaccination is an important part of prevention now, but it takes time to get immune from vaccinations, and we're not there yet.
And as we head into a busy Easter weekend, Forbes says it's up to everyone to be responsible and protect themselves as a third wave is now taking hold of countries around the world.
There are countries that are in large third waves and even fourth waves that have reluctantly had to put in place some serious restrictions. We don't want to have to get there.
Again, Forbes said it's all about being cautious and following the restrictions put in place. Reporting for Our News, I'm Kyle.
Well, the Bahamas is set to receive COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX facility tomorrow morning at Jet Aviation. The National COVID-19 Vaccine Consultative Committee announced last night that it will receive 33,600 doses. This batch represents the first tranche of a total of 100,800 doses earmarked for the Bahamas and prepaid through the PAHO revolving fund. The Bahamas received 20,000 doses from the government of India on March 10th. Since March 14th, the committee says more than 7,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine have been administered on New Providence and Grand Bahama. Well, 9 people, including a 17-year-old girl, were arraigned in the magistrate's court today, accused of possessing and uttering fake COVID-19 tests. Jared Higgs has the details.
That 17-year-old girl was the first to be escorted into court on Monday afternoon, and hours later, with her aunt by her side, she pleaded guilty to possessing and uttering a negative RT-PCR test from Doctors Hospital, knowing that it was fraudulent. That juvenile was charged alongside 24-year-old Samuel Colebrook. He's the taller of the 2 men, seen here wearing black. He also pleaded guilty to both counts. He and the juvenile girl will return to court on April 1st and were released on their own recognizance until sentencing. 2 other defendants out of the 9 who were charged also pleaded guilty. 40-year-old Scott Davis, seen in the plaid shirt, admitted to producing the fake tests to COVID ambassadors at LPIA as he prepared to board a flight to South Andros. That decision proved extra costly because not only was Davis arrested, but his child was also taken into social services custody. With his guilty plea on record, Davis was granted $3,000 bail, and he returns to court on April 7th to be sentenced. Ed Roy Roll, in the green shirt, also pleaded guilty to possessing and uttering a phony negative COVID test and will return to court later this week to be sentenced. Several others were charged, including 40-year-old Exuma resident Rakila Smith, seen wearing the black sweater. She pleaded not guilty to both counts and was released on $2,000 bail with the requirement that she sign in at the Georgetown police station before 6 p.m. every Friday. Kevin Taylor, the shorter of the two men in black being escorted, Patrice Roll in the striped dress, and Rhodesha Munnings also faced the two charges and pleaded not guilty. Magistrate Andrew Forbes freed them on $2,000 bail, and they'll be joined by Smith for the start of trial on July 28th. While those defendants got bail from Magistrate Forbes after pleading not guilty, one of the accused women was remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections after she pleaded not guilty before Chief Magistrate Joy Ann Ferguson Pratt. 25-year-old Janae Jolly wasn't represented by an attorney, and her bail decision will come on April 1st at noon. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
Well, the Bahamas Christian Council's investigative committee on COVID-19 vaccines has recommended that everyone should make their own decision on whether to get vaccinated. Chairman Mario Moxie says there were a number of factors the committee felt satisfied with, including the fact that there were no components of aborted fetus or cell lines in the production of the vaccine.
Because there's the issue that surfaces about whether or not this is end-time prophecy, it's a mark of the beast, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that this is not that. So there is nothing from a moral perspective that will prevent someone from receiving the vaccine.
Moxie says after some apprehension on his part, he got his COVID-19 vaccine today.
As we gather more information, and the more I was able to gain from that knowledge, I realized all the safety checks had been done. My comfort level began to grow as I got more and more familiar with the information. And it's at the point now where I am willing to be vaccinated. I'm going to get vaccinated today.
In other news, after executives from Equinor recently paid a courtesy call on the Attorney General and the Environment Minister, environmentalist Joe Darville says he wants to see less talk and more action following the oil spill that occurred during Hurricane Dorian. Jasmine Brown has that.
Equinor execs met with the AG and Environment Minister on March 18th and presented a video that they say detailed the impact Monster Storm Dorian had on their oil storage and transshipment facilities. But Save the Bay's Chairman Joe Darville says that meeting provides no comfort for concerned Grand Bahamians.
None whatsoever. I would have been a little bit more comfortable had they invited representatives from environmental groups there with the Attorney General and with the Minister for the Environment, who have been monitoring this thing from the beginning. And we're the ones who've been putting the information out there. We're the ones who've been agitating for the proper restoration of our forest. And there is no way that forest is going to be restored.
Dorian, which was the strongest storm on record to hit the Bahamas, blew the roofs off several of Equinor's storage tanks, distributing oil across the acreage of the property and into its neighboring forest. Equinor has reportedly invested more than $200 million and employed 250 Grand Bahama residents to conduct environmental cleanup and remediation at the facility and also in the surrounding forestry land over the past year. Equinor also claimed there is almost complete rehabilitation of the land and forestry, but Darville strongly disagrees.
Our Bahamians who are working there, they're extremely diligent and conscientious. And my estimation on the basis of what they've done so far is going to take them at least one more year, if not longer, for them to do the proper cleaning up of that particular spillage in our massive pine forest, which includes hundreds of acres of wetlands.
Equinor says it is fully committed to the repair and upgrade of the facility and plans on reconstructing fuel storage tanks in full compliance with Bahamian environmental laws and regulations. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Well, pleasant conditions in the capital today. Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with the details.
Thanks, Christina. Your first look at weather tonight is being brought to you by Ports International for all your medical supplies and your equipment needs. Warm day once again around the islands, and high pressure still in charge, maintaining those 80-degree temperatures. We are in the 70s once again this evening. 74 outside our studios with just a few clouds. The winds are out of the southeast at 6 knots. Your feels like temperature still in the mid-70s. Lots of sunshine around all the islands today. We have some streamers, we call those streamers, moving off the islands. Some showers downwind of those across the central Bahamas, but those showers are dying as the evening goes on. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come, the PLP not impressed by plans for a new upscale community, plus the Humane Society's plea for help. Stay with us.
Every new season of On the Record, we push the limits. Venture into unknown territory. We take our cameras into places unseen before. We share the stories and experiences that affect us all. And now it's time for Season 5. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on RTV Cable Channel 212 and streaming live on Facebook on the R News Bahamas page.
Progressive Liberal Party Deputy Leader Chester Cooper is labeling the Prime Minister's plans for an upscale community in Western New Providence for young Bahamians as a political exercise. Cooper feels the Minnis administration is targeting a select few in the largest voting bloc in the country instead of constructing homes for those in need.
If he was truly interested in resolving the housing problem, we would see more creativity in how we approach the housing shortage in the country. We would also begin by looking at the large backlog of at least 10,000 persons at the Mortgage Corp and the Ministry of Housing who are in need of houses.
The lots will be valued at $150,000, but will be sold for $50,000. Dr. Minnis said banks would lend funds for the construction of homes with no down payment required due to the value of the land, but Cooper is skeptical.
They're not thinking through the details. They talk about government having the first right to acquire these homes if you want to sell them. Well, how will that work? Will banks willingly give loans when the government must be the first buyer? They talk about having conversations with banks. You could have as many conversations with banks as you wish, but they have certain guidelines. They have certain thresholds that will meet their fiduciary obligations, and any program you design must make sense for them.
Well, the Bahamas Humane Society officials are speaking out after newborn puppies and kittens were left on their doorstep. Shelter manager Percy Grant warns that their chance of survival is low without their mothers. Bethany McDermott tells us more.
In just 2 weeks, more than 100 newborn puppies, 30 bottle-fed kittens, and dozens more kittens and cats were dumped on the doorstep of the Bahamas Humane Society.
It's very difficult because it's every few hours you got to, feed them, and it's a difficult thing, and they have to be fed properly. You need to use goat milk, which is expensive. You will go to food store to see a can of goat milk could run you to around $4 or $5.
Grant stressed that a newborn's chance of survival is slim without its mother. Just this past weekend, a group of newborn puppies were dropped off and didn't make it through the weekend. Take these adorable newborn kittens, for instance.
So these guys have to be fed every 3 hours, round the clock, including at night time.
That's extremely important, folks. You got to leave the puppies, to leave the kittens with their mothers. And if you are going to bring the puppies or the kittens, you need to bring the moms. If you don't want them, we have a clinic here. We can spay and neuter them. You can get them back if you prefer. If not, but we need to have both.
In January, the Humane Society had an occupancy of up to 630. That number has since decreased to 330 due to airlifts to other countries, with another 100 animals in foster care. Grant is urging pet owners to be responsible.
People need to spay and neuter the animals, they need to fence their yards in, they need to keep gates closed.
Well, if you're looking to adopt one of these adorable puppies or a kitten or even an older dog or cat, Fiona Moody tells us how to do so.
They would need to fill out an application form. They are required to have a fenced-in yard, not just fenced in with secure gates.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Bethany McDermott.
There's more news coming up, but first, your RF Market Watch.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. our website at www.rfgroup.com.
Coming up is the DNA and discussions with other parties, plus the latest in sports. Stay with us.
Every new season of On the Record, we push the limits. Venture into unknown territory. We take our cameras into places unseen before. We share the stories and experiences that affect us all. And now it's time for Season 5. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on RTV Cable Channel 212 and streaming live on Facebook on the R News Bahamas page.
This is our news. Welcome back. Although the Democratic National Alliance has already ratified 19 candidates for the next general election, party leader Arinthia Komalafe says the DNA would be open to considering a coalition, adding that they are having discussions with independent parties.
Who share the same ideology and philosophy that we do, so that we can have a strong force in the next general election.
Last week, Coalition of Independents leader Lincoln Bain offered an olive branch to third parties to put aside differences and unite. Well, during a press conference today, the DNA also called on the government to provide rental and housing assistance for Bahamians struggling during the pandemic.
We're asking the government to consider allowing those tax payments that are accruing to the government to be settled in exchange for having the residents or the tenants live inside the home. And so in that regard, the landlords would not have to pay the real property tax to the government.
And tonight in sports, Jazz Chisholm is a starter for opening day as Ole Miss and Coach Yo battled for the WNIT. Marcellus Hall has more.
All right, thanks a lot, Christina. Welcome to our sports on a Monday, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Good news for baseball fans and Bahamians. As the Major League Baseball season gets ready to roll around, we'll have an added interest. Jazz Chisholm, you see him right behind me, will be the starting second baseman of the Miami Marlins. Let's take a look. Florida Marlins have made the wise decision to add Bahamian Jazz Chisholm to their starting lineup to start the 2021 Major League Baseball season. Marlins making it official over the weekend at the end of spring training. Chisholm beating out Isan Diaz after hitting .268 with 3 homers and 4 stolen bases. Meanwhile, Diaz getting just 2 hits in his 34 at-bats. He will start the season at AAA. The Marlins will play the Tampa Bay Rays on opening day, which is April 1st. Deandre Aidan and the Phoenix Suns taking on the Charlotte Hornets yesterday. This one a tight battle right down to the bitter end. 2 squads go to overtime. Phoenix able to pull off the win, however, 101-97 your final. Deandre playing 33 minutes. He finished with 14 points and 14 rebounds. Suns still second in the West at 31-14 with a date versus the Atlanta Hawks coming your way on Tuesday. And still with hoops, Coach-elect McPhee McEwen and her Ole Miss Lady Rebels playing in the championship game of the WNIT yesterday. Lady Rebels taking on the Rice Owls in the title game. Rebels with no answers, however, for Rice's 6'9 center, who scored 19 points, grabbed 14 rebounds, and added 7 blocks. Rice gets the win 71-58. After the game, Coach Yo with the thoughts on the contest.
Our lack of experience reared his head. I mean, just not being composed, making layups. We took 20 more shots than them. I mean, if we... I could think about 5 layups we didn't make, and we didn't have that sense of urgency. Like my team, was acting as if they had another game tomorrow. And my message on the board was no do-overs, ladies. This is it. And they can't understand it until they go through it. So we had to go through it. But I thought that Rice dominated the game for 40 minutes.
And before we wrap up sports, just a reminder, our Bahamas national soccer team did play this past weekend up against St. Kitts at the National Stadium. That did not go quite as planned. Bahamas goes down 4-0 in that particular match. They have another one coming up against the Dominican Republic. All right, now that's your check on sports. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Christina.
Still to come, preparing an Easter feast for the family. Stay with us.
Every new season of On the Record, we push the limits. Venture into unknown territory. We take our cameras into places unseen before. We share the stories and experiences that affect us all. And now it's time for Season 5. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on RTV Cable Channel 212 and streaming live on Facebook on the R News Bahamas page.
Welcome back to our news. What kind of conditions can we expect in the week ahead? Greg is back in the weather studio with the details.
Thanks again, Christina. Our second look at weather tonight is being brought to you by 7 Seas, distributed by NASA Agency. Satellite view around the area, high pressure persisting across our area, dominating our weather with dry and hot conditions. Breezy across the central and southeastern islands. We do have a frontal boundary to the north of the Bahamas, expected to lift back towards the north and wash out. System on the far western coast of the United States. That's a system going to get in here by Thursday, Friday, ushering in some changes in our weather. Cooler conditions expected, as well as breezy conditions into the weekend. Your boating forecast for the northwest Bahamas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the southeast at 15 knots. Seas running 3 to 5 feet over the ocean. While in the central and southeastern islands, a caution flag for you guys down there. East to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. Seas running 4 to 7 feet over the ocean. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast through Saturday. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe Monday night, everybody. Christina?
Thanks, Greg. Well, from fried fish on Good Friday to lamb on Easter Sunday, Easter feasts have become just as much a tradition as going to church. Tonight, a popular chef teaches our Jasmine Brown how to whip up a holiday fave.
The Easter holidays are typically a time when families get together to have a good time. And there's no better way to do that than by sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying that much-awaited Easter dinner. They say cooking is soothing to the soul, and no one knows that better than Chef Koya Lightborn, who has been whipping up delicious meals across the world for more than 15 years.
So we're going to start with a little bit of vegetable oil. Then you have about a quarter of a cup of each of bell pepper, or sweet pepper like we say. Then we have celery, about 1 stalk, and then a quarter of a cup of white onion, and then that goes in the pot.
Ooh, that's the best sound. Add some fresh thyme, tomato paste, and conch reserve, which is fancy for water you use to boil your conch.
This is what's going to make your pot nice and brown. So I've boiled 1 pound of beaten conch, and now I'm going to pour 16 ounces of that reserved water into this pot.
Chef Koya then added the conch and yellow grits, and voila! In 15 minutes, we had ourselves a steaming pot of conch and grits. But that was only half of our Good Friday meal. Next up was the fried fish.
This is about 1.5 inches of cooking oil. That is on, I'd say, a medium heat. Because these snappers are pretty thin and they're gonna fry it pretty quickly.
After those 20 minutes, Chef Koya plated and presented us with the finished product. And let me say it was quite delicious. Now, if you're wondering what to cook for Easter Sunday, Chef Koya says you can never go wrong with lamb or ham. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas. On the Front Line starts right now.